Welcome to the GenX Experience, the podcast that celebrates the unique journey of 80s kids navigating midlife. I'm your host, Blythe Alperin. Each episode, my guests and I will share with you the unique differences that define our generation and how we are navigating those differences in the real world. Join me for laughs, insights, and a sense of community. Let's embrace the GenX Experience together. Welcome back to the GenX Experience. Welcome to episode 27. Today is a solo episode, so you get to either just listen or look at me. Aren't you lucky? This is our second episode in our month of March solo travel theme. And today we're going to do two things. We're going to listen to me talk. Well, you're going to listen to me talk about my trip in Portugal. I wanted to go in more detail and just give you an idea if you're thinking about going on a trip with wild terrains. I interviewed the founder in our previous episode. I highly recommend listening to that because it really tells you more about the company, how they curate their experiences, and why you should just book the trip. So I'm going to share more about that. And then we're going to take a little trip down memory lane to reminisce about what it was like to travel as a kid when we didn't have, or as a young adult, when we didn't have cell phones or Google Maps. We had calling cards and physical maps until we had like MapQuest. And then you had so many pieces of paper telling you all the directions. It was a completely different experience. And we're going to talk about that because traveling alone the first time, I remember, I want to say I was in high school when it was really just me. Like I had traveled with my brother and sister, but like that wasn't the same when it was just me having to navigate things. And I remember feeling like such an adult. I think I was 15 or 16, not really an adult. So we're going to go down memory lane. But first, let's get into my trip. If you are watching this on Spotify or YouTube, there'll be some visual images. I will also be uploading some pictures and a reel and things on our Instagram, the GenX Experience Pod, so you can see what I got to experience and see how beautiful Portugal is. We went to 3 different cities: Lisbon, Santa Cruz, and Porto. I don't know what it was about Porto, but I love that place. I want to go back and explore it more and to go to Gaia, which is like literally across the river. So let's get into my trip. I booked it last May. They had like I think Memorial Day special. And I was like, you know what? I want to treat myself to a trip for my 50th. And I had been talking about going on a trip for years, but trying to coordinate with people. It just, for various reasons, it didn't happen. I was like, I'm not staying home. So I booked a trip for the fall, for November. And I spent 8 days in Portugal. And this trip will remain one of my favorite experiences of my life. I don't even know how to describe it. I had the best time. I fell in love with Portugal. The women on my trip were incredible. Our guide was just a delight and made the trip even better. And all of the women artisans and entrepreneurs and winemakers that we, and hoteliers, like all of them that we met were just inspiring and interesting. And I'm so thankful that I decided to book the trip. I will say, as was mentioned in the previous episode, if you're going to do one of these trips, whether it's with wild terrains or another group, fly in the day before, because the jet lag was so real, because I really couldn't sleep on my flight over. I flew from Atlanta to Boston. I had like a long layover in Boston, and the flight from Boston to Lisbon is like 5.5 hours. I couldn't sleep. There were a few moments where I was like, I would like to get off this ride. I did not sign up for this and I can't sleep. I don't like turbulence. Not that anybody does, but you definitely feel it a little bit less on the bigger planes. But there was a couple moments where I'm like, we're on a huge plane and I still don't like this. Also, unfortunately, due to my perimenopause, which I'm going to just blame for everything, I have really bad travel anxiety and it's kind of annoying. So it is what it is. But anyway, that was one of the conversations. We had conversations about dating. We had conversations about perimenopause. We had conversations about the election. We had conversations about lots of different things. So we got to stay at 3 different hotels because we spent time in Lisbon, Santa Cruz, and Porto. All of these hotels are so unique. We had more of a traditional room, but like still like kind of a boutique, kind of felt like you were staying in a house. When we were in Porto, we stayed at this incredible little like boutique resort, very like farm to table, kind of right on the ocean. Not kind of, it was right on the ocean, and you could walk over and like you're standing on a cliff looking at the Atlantic Ocean from the other side. And it was just so cool to think, across the pond, well, oceans and thousands of miles away is home. Um, it was so cool. The hotel we stayed at in Lisbon, Lisboans, was more like a boutique apartment. So everyone had like their own bedroom, and we had our own little like living space and a little kitchenette, of course, a bathroom. And I enjoyed just getting up in the morning, and I am not a morning person and I am not a breakfast person. I so enjoyed getting up and having a slow morning for the time we were in Lisbon and enjoying breakfast. Can I just tell you, I don't know what they do in Portugal, but I looked forward to the orange juice. It was every morning we would get fresh squeezed orange juice. It is the best orange juice I've ever had. And I used to make myself fresh squeezed orange juice when I was a kid because I really just like it that way. This blew that away. The yogurt we had in our fridge, I ate it every single day. It was incredible. We had conversations about the yogurt. We had conversations about the grapes that were in our fridge. They gave us cheese. We had granola. If you ate meat, they had that in the fridge. You had water. You had jam, which was a fig jam, which I really liked, and bought some to take home. You could have coffee, tea. It was so nice and comforting. And they gave us like a little notebook, and if you're watching, I'm holding up, they give us a little map that you could take around. It was really, really cool. And everybody was just so kind and welcoming. The people of Portugal are just very warm and inviting. I can see why people like to move there. Please, Americans, don't ruin it. I think you're starting to price out Lisbon. Please don't do that to Porto. But they just were interesting, and several of my Uber drivers, with one exception, gave us tips and gave me tips and pointers like where to go, and kind of drove around. Like they were just very nice. I only had one Uber driver who was watching racing on his phone while driving, and kind of thought he was also racing through the city streets of Lisbon. Those are very small streets, very hilly, and the sidewalks are made of like tiles, so it was a little. When you get older, and you probably all know this as Gen Xers, like you'll be walking certain times or stepping off a curb or whatever and thinking, I could hurt myself, I could fall, which of course then you're just thinking of that. So it was funny because one night we went to a Fado concert, like eating like a dinner theater kind of thing. Fado is like the traditional music of Portugal, and it started to rain a little bit, and we're all like, okay, let's be careful, like we could fall. It was pretty funny because you just get to that point. But we met with an artist in Portugal, in Lisbon, who does street art, commissioned street art. I'm showing some of her stuff now. Her name is Vanessa Teodoro. If I'm saying that wrong, I apologize. But we got to see some of her commissioned street work. She works mostly in black and white, which is really, really cool. Very graphic design inspired. She is a graphic designer. That was really cool. We got to go to the Monsanto forest and forage for cocktail ingredients. And then we got to sit outside and enjoy a homemade meal. We got to do that twice, once in Lisbon and then once in the Douro Valley, where we got to sit outside at a winery and enjoy homemade food and drink port. It was incredible. I need more adjectives, so I apologize if I keep using the same words, but it was just a really special trip. So after spending a few days in Portugal and getting to go to a cooking class and a cocktail class and spending time with an artist and an entrepreneur and discovering things like, fig jam and orange wine, which I really, really like. I bought a bottle that I brought back that we drank at Thanksgiving. We'll have to definitely find orange wine again. It's called orange wine because it has an orange color. The flavor is just, I don't know how to describe it. It's not too dry. It's not too sweet. It's just very light. It was so good. It was so, so good. So then we took a trip to Santa Cruz. It was very interesting. So the women on my trip we had one Gen Zer, I think she was like 26, 27. And then most of the women were like my age and a little bit older. We had two sisters from Canada. We had a pediatrician. We had someone from Texas. We had someone that also lives here in Georgia. Riley lives in Florida. It was 8 of us, and from all different walks of life, but very interesting. And we had very cool conversations about all kinds of things. And our guide, Rita, love her so much. She made the trip even more special because she kept us informed. She made sure we were all comfortable and okay. And, if we were walking somewhere, she would point out little things about Portugal. Like, for instance, their democracy is 50 years old. So in 1974, they became a democracy. So it's really cool. Like, we're basically standing in a country that is old, but is young at the same time. So that was really interesting, and seeing like the street art and the tiles on the buildings. Like, if I could take a wall back with me with all the tiles on there, I would. I'll post pictures. We'll see how beautiful they were. So we had an interesting trip to Santa Cruz. I was in the car. It was me, Riley, Mary Ellen, and Maggie. And our driver thought he was on the Autobahn. And he was going very, very, very fast. I didn't know the other women were as freaked out as I was. I kept trying to look at the speedometer to see how fast he was going. Well, we luckily had a little stop. And the 4 of us, I'm like, oh my God, am I the only one that thinks we're driving too fast? And like, yes, everyone was freaked out. Some of us were trying to keep our eyes closed. It was just hilarious. I think at one point, Maggie's like, do you think this is safe? And I'm like, well, we're in a Mercedes, and they are really known for, being the pioneer of safety features in a car. And she kind of laughed at me. She's like, okay. And later she's like, that made me feel better, but it was also funny. And then Mary Ellen was trying to take a picture outside, and things are just whizzing by. And Maggie's like, I don't think you're going to get what you want. So it kind of was a little joke, but let's just say the trip did not take us as long as it was supposed to. And when we got off the highway, we were on like the back roads where you kind of had to slow down. We were all thankful. That driver did not come back the next time because we kind of made it known that he was terrifying. And not even kidding. Like, you could feel how fast he was going. So it was crazy. It's also funny too, which I knew this because I'd been to Europe before, that when you're getting like a little van or cars, like they're Mercedes, or I think I was in one of the, is it Windstar? One of the like electric vehicles. It was very cool. So we went to this really amazing little resort, like boutique resort in Santa Cruz. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. I think it's Arrayas do Sexto. I'm very bad with languages. I apologize, but it was gorgeous. I will post pictures. It was like little houses we were staying in, like there were like 3 stories. And really interesting, they had like a little pool in front. It was too cold to swim. The Canadians got in the water. I could hear them screaming because it was so cold. My room had like this giant bathtub that I tried to take a bath in, although I kept sliding because it was so looked very long. The rooms were really cool, and it was very industrial. The food was amazing, very farm to table. We all sat around. They had like a little sing-along, and I, who am like the shyest person, I was like, I didn't do the dancing, but we were singing and had little instruments, and it was really fun and just very communal with other guests there. My favorite part was walking to the water. We were basically staying kind of on a cliff, above the Atlantic Ocean, and there were surfers there. It was cool watching them. But just to think, I was like, across the pond, so to speak, is America, is my home, and I'm standing on the other side. Like, how often do you get to see the Atlantic Ocean from the other side? And it was just beautiful. It made me miss my parents, because I knew, like, especially my dad, he would have just loved it. I sent pictures to my brother and sister and my friends. I'm like, yeah, this view sucks. I was joking because it was stunning. I took a really cool picture of the sun coming through the clouds onto the water. It was stunning. And then we just spent like a day and a half in Santa Cruz, and then we went to Porto. And there was just something about, even though we came there at night, the vibe just changed. Like, the minute we got there, I was like, this place is stunning. I just love it here. I don't know what it was. It was just incredible. And we got to spend time there in another cool hotel that was like very boutique. You wouldn't even know it was there. It was just walking down the street, and it was owned by a woman and had like the greens, and it was called Duas Portas. I highly recommend going, if you go to Portugal, to stay at these places because they are just so unique and cool and give you a very interesting experience. And everyone is very welcoming. So you're going to get little extra things like chocolates or treats, or they'll have water or wine or breakfast. It's very nice. So we got into Porto, kind of chilled for the night. And then the next day, we got to go to the Douro Valley. Now, I don't know what I was picturing as a valley. I don't think I was picturing like hills. I don't know, like a wide open space. So we go, and then we kind of stop, like, okay, the road is going to get very curvy. That is an understatement. You are literally driving down this winding road where if you make a wrong turn, you're going to tumble very far over into the valley. But what's really it's stunning. What's really cool is the way they grow grapes. It's not what you imagine when you think of like France or Italy or even California. They're growing these grapes like kind of on a hill, and it's very small patches, not huge. They'll have it here, this hill, that hill. They can't even really get a car down there, so they kind of pick things by hand, and they'll grow a variety of grapes just in one spot. And so we got to hang out with the owners of, the female owner of Wine and Soul. It's a family-owned winery. It's been around for a very long time. It was so cool. We got to explore the where they're storing the wine and learn more about the process. They make port. They have red wine, white wine. They also make their own olive oil. We actually met two different people, one in Lisbon, and then of course the Douro Valley, who had family-owned olive groves. The olives, they were so good. If I could have taken my suitcase home with an entire thing of olives, I would have, because they were it was just delicious. And the olive oil, so great. So then we got to sit outside the valley in the background and taste, white port, which I'd never had. And I bought a bottle so that we could have it at Thanksgiving, and then it lasts longer. So it took me a few months to finish. I also bought one of their reds and their whites that's made with like so many grapes. I think the variety is, 30 different indigenous varieties. It's called Pentas Character Red. I bought one of those. Their 10-year-old Tawny Port, which is a white port, was so good. And then I think I also bought their Guru White, which is also a blend. And it was really cool trying. This is it, showing it for those that are watching. It was really just so cool to get to try it and to hear more about it. I really, really loved it. This is the map. I have the map of Porto and the little note that they left us at that hotel. And we spent the whole day there. I did have a moment of claustrophobia. So we went in this old Jeep, and I unfortunately was sitting in the back, and I got in and I'm sitting there. I'm like, I'll be fine. Nope. Things started closing, and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to have a panic attack. So luckily, Stacy was nice enough to switch with me. And I sat in the front, and that was fine, because again, another thing is getting older. My claustrophobia has gotten a lot worse. But just driving around there, exploring and hearing the history of the Douro Valley and the winery, seeing their dogs, and I'll definitely be ordering more wine. If you're interested in trying the wine, let me know, and I can tell you where to go, because you can actually order it. Although I don't know now, tariffs. You can order it from Saratoga Wines, which it'll be cheaper to ship. Wine and Soul does ship, but you have to order the like 6 bottles or 12, and there's taxes and things. But the wine is really good. If you have a chance to try wine from the Douro Valley, I highly, highly recommend, because it's delicious, and just the atmosphere, the earth, the air there really gives the wine a unique flavor. And if you're not a port fan, try white port, because I actually like port. I tried it once many, many years ago in New York, and I'm like, oh, it kind of has like a raisiny flavor. It's a little thick. This was something different, delicious. I would like to try their other port as well, but the white port, it was so cool. And then we drove back to the windy roads on the other side where you're like, we could plummet. But we got to stop and we're overlooking the Douro, the valley and the river. And it's just, I don't even know how to describe it. It was stunning, just stunning, and such a unique, memorable experience that I love sharing with these women, complete strangers, but it was still, we were all standing there in awe. And that was just so nice to be experiencing something. Yes, your family and friends are not there, but you're standing with these people who are experiencing the same thing with you, that are in the same, they're solo travelers as well. The next day was our last day in Portugal, and we had the day to ourselves to spend in Porto. And I decided I want to do some cultural stuff and then also explore the city. And they had, one of the cool things too that Wild Terrains gives you is like, there's I can't remember what they call them. I printed them up. What are they called? Yes, I made a folder that I printed up stuff, and so I had all the information in case for some reason I couldn't get my phone to work. So hi, can you tell I'm GenX? Because I printed out my insurance and travel insurance because you are required to get it. So yes, Wild Terrain has what they call detours. Now you can either like book things if you want, or they would give you suggestions like, hey, if you want to go shopping, here are some suggestions. If you want to go tour things, here are some suggestions. So when I was in Porto, I was like, yeah, I want to go to museums. So I went to the Serralves. I'm probably butchering their Serral. It's Serra. Is that an L? VS. Yes, Serralves. Serralves. If you're Portuguese and you're listening to this, you're like, this woman is butchering it. I apologize. I love your country. And if I go there again, I'll learn to say things better. But so I have the little guide from there, and it was really cool because it's like a garden that you could walk around, and then art, and it's very like modern art. So they have different exhibits, and then they have this old Art Deco house. That was the only thing that was like a little disappointing because I thought it would still be like Art Deco design, but inside they had these very weird art exhibits. There was one that was just, you walk in and there's just leather, I think it was leather jackets or denim jackets just hanging up there. There was just some very weird stuff. The only thing that was really cool is like the bathrooms. This sounds weird. The bathrooms were still in the Art Deco style, but they had some art stuff going on there. So it was really just, those were cool because you felt like you were stepping back in time to the 1920s. So after that, I decided I wanted to go and explore Porto. And I walked around a little bit, and I wanted to go to this cafe again. I'm sorry, my brain, it's not getting there. It's the oldest cafe, I think, in Portugal, maybe. Yes. And I was like, you know what? I know it's a touristy destination, but I don't care. I'm a tourist. So my Uber driver took me there, and he kind of took me in a way. He showed me things and also made sure I could get out really easily because where the cafe is an area where you can't really drive. There's like, it's kind of like if you lived on South Beach, Lincoln Road, it's kind of like that, where you can walk freely without cars. So I sat at this cafe and I had like lunch, and I had the most interesting hot chocolate. It was like the thickest thing ever. It was just cool. This place was very early 1900s and just so amazing. And I really loved it, as touristy as it was. And the maitre d' kept giving me the winky face. It was a little strange. So I was like, okay, because I think I'm a little sweaty from walking to the museum. I did get a little lost walking to the museum, but being the bold person that I am, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to cut through. So I literally cut through grass and hills and whatever and got myself back where I needed to do by following the map. So when in Portugal, and as a Gen Xer, we still know how to read maps and we can find our way if we need to. So yeah, then I just walked around Porto and went to this little cafe, like this little open air market. I went to different stores that they had recommended. I bought myself a little art piece, an illustration. And I didn't realize at the time that I bought it. I'll include a picture. It's a woman bird watching, but when I saw it, I saw a woman with binoculars, like by herself exploring. And I'm like, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing something by myself with others. And I kind of just like, this is this is cool. This means something to me. Of course, it's very colorful because I am not a beige girl. And I need to still hang it up in my apartment. But it was just so cool. And I kind of decided that I want to kind of do that when I go to places. I like to get a souvenir, but I'm like, wouldn't it be cool to get little pieces of local art, whether it's pottery or an illustration? So yeah, I just kind of walked around and roamed around, and I didn't really have a plan. I just kind of went. That was the one thing too. I decided I'm just going to like let go and not have to plan every minute that we're not doing stuff. I'm just going to walk around. So somehow I ended up finding this really cool little store. And then I walked down and I was like, I don't really know where I am. Don't care. Have my phone. And I started walking along the Douro River. And it just made me happy. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to keep walking and see where this takes me. And at some point, though, I was thirsty. I was trying to find a place to get some water. Well, I found a little place that was, how do I describe it? It was like a closet with vending machines. And I can't remember the name of it, but it was this little place. I'm like, oh, I'll just get a water in there. I thought it was like a little cafe or whatever. And I got my water. And as I'm looking in the vending machine, I'm like, oh, they're interesting. They have condoms, they have food, they have treats, whatever. And then I saw this thing and I was like, what is that? What is that? Well, it was a pocket Pussy. And I was like, okay, so that's not something you'd see in America because, you know, why would you? I didn't expect to to see it in Portugal either. It was interesting. So I took a picture of it, which I'm trying to find now. I will include it online, but it was hilarious, and I had to look it up because at first I didn't really quite understand what it was, and it was called Flex, and it says vaginal experience. I was like, I didn't know what it was, so I took a picture. I'm like, I'll look it up later. So then that day we had our goodbye dinner at this like kind of hotel supper club kind of thing, and it was beautiful and nice and interesting, like deconstructed food, where like deconstructed like recipes that are traditional kind of deconstructed. We had a different drink with like every round, and if you didn't drink they made like mocktails, and it was very cool. Different desserts. So I'm telling the women, I'm like, so I saw this really interesting thing, this like little rest stop kind of thing, and I showed them and I'm like, look at this. And then they're like, what is that? I'm like, I don't know. And then even Rita, our guide, she's like, I've never seen this. I don't know what this is. So I looked it up, and yes, it is a vibrator or sex toy for men. Do they have one for women? No. So I guess if you're tired and you're walking around and, you know, if you don't have a partner, so you don't need the condoms, you're just by yourself, you're solo traveling and you're a man, you can enjoy it yourself with a little flex. So, and of course, because I'm a 12-year-old, I had to send pictures to my best friend and to my friends here and to everyone. I'm like, look at this. Because I'm like, where are you? What are you doing? So anyway, that was our last night, sitting around the table, talking, laughing, enjoying time. And then the next morning, I got up and went to the airport in a Uber ride that was a little scary. I don't know why he was going so fast. It was rush hour traffic. And then I flew home via Amsterdam. Beautiful airport. I've been to Amsterdam before. It was a little unnerving because there had been some issues in the city that day or that week. Wasn't bought at the airport, but also the men doing the customs. They were very very attractive. I was like, oh, hello. Would you like to check my passport? So yeah, so I flew home on KLM, which is a very nice airline. I mean, they're a partner of Delta. And I watched 4 movies because I flew in the morning till you get home at like 8 or 9, you're supposed to stay up. So it's just like you're doing a day. And so when you're not going to mess your time up. So yes, I watched four movies because it was like 8.5 hours, much better flight home than it was there. It's very smooth, very comfortable. So I watched Inside Out 2, loved it. I watched the second, oh my God, I can't, whatever Ryan Reynolds movie. Why am I not? You know what I'm talking about. Not sure if he's going to be making any more of those because little drama with his wife. Anyways, and then I was like, you know what? Why don't I watch some Dutch movies? So I watched two. Again, forgetting that I'm in Europe, right? Where, well, flying from Europe, where they're not as prudish as the United States. So I'm watching this movie, and I should have taken a picture of like what they were called. I don't remember. But it was a love story about this woman who's about to get married, and then she goes on her like little hen weekend or bachelorette, and she meets this guy and they fall in love, and he doesn't really tell her. He's like, he's leaving, whatever. Well, it turns out he's dying. So she finds this out because she falls in love with him, and she decides she wants to be with him, and finds out he's taking himself to a hospice to die. And she's like, no, you're not doing that. So sweet love story, right? But then of course there's some sex scenes, raunchy sex scenes that you don't want to be watching on a plane when you can't turn your screen, because this is on my seat, not on my iPad. And I'm sitting next to some random guy, and I'm like, oh, we'll just fast forward to that. And then, of course, the movie is sad because he does die. He does have like terminal cancer, and she takes care of him because she's a nurse. So then I'm like crying on the plane. Then I watched another movie that was more like a Hallmarky kind of thing where this woman goes to take care of her aunt's like B&B, and of course she falls in love with some guys and this whatever, and it wasn't as Hallmarky, but it was like reminiscent of that. You know, high-powered career woman decides to stay in this town and run this bed and breakfast because she just really loves it and loves the guy. And of course, he's not. You know, he seems like he's just some random carpenter. Meanwhile, he's been some high-powered. You know how it is. So it was really cool. I was sad to leave. I was tired though, and I was excited to get back to Busty. If you're watching, you can see him in the background. On the couch waiting for me to finish so we can go for a little walk. But that's his spot. He likes to sit on my couch and watch over me. So yes, that was my trip to Portugal. If you're listening, Rita, or any of the women that were on the trip with me, thank you for making it such a memorable experience, and for being so kind and for sharing the time with me. I enjoyed meeting all of you and sharing the time with you. And maybe we'll see each other sometime in the future. And again, if you want to go to Portugal with wild terrains, make sure you say hi to Rita for me, and you'll not regret it. It's really great. I would like to check out their Argentina trip, and I would like to check out their New Orleans trip, and maybe Japan, because their trips are really cool. So we will see. I definitely want to do more exploring, and whether that is with friends or family or on solo trips, I don't care. I'm going to go to the places I want to go and enjoy my life. So I'm so thankful that I got to spend the time there. And with that, let's go back in time, shall we? Let's go back to the 80s and the 90s, right? When we were growing up, and you would go on vacation with your parents. I mean, we did. Summer vacations, spring break, whatever. But the first time you kind of got to solo travel might have been a college trip, or when you were in college, right? And you went on spring break, or, you went to conferences. Like my first solo trip, really, like I said, like, I don't know if I've said this, but it was to a conference in DC, National Young Leaders. It was a really fun experience. We got to hang out in DC and talk to our congressman and do a mock debate and see really cool things and watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is an incredible movie with Jimmy Stewart. We're in this like old theater, had pizza. We got to walk around DC, explore. It was just so cool. Lots of cute boys. We were all in high school, but it was the first time where I really was on a trip by myself. And I thought I was so grown up. I remember not like dressing up, but I definitely didn't look like, now I go in like the most comfortable clothes. Like I have matching little sets because I want to be in my comfies. So I remember like going to the bathroom at one point and looking around the aisle to see if were there any cute boys on my flight that might be on my trip. There were. So, but we didn't have phones, right? We had calling cards, or we would call collect, and you basically, I made it click, or you had limits for how long you could use the calling cards. And if you overused them and you ran out of money or you ran out of time, your parents were not going to be happy with you. And you were going to hear it. Because if they had to spend more money, because long distance was expensive. It wasn't now where you just pick up the phone. Even when we first had cell phones, you had to wait till after a certain time, or you had limited text, and you were getting charged if somebody called you or you called them, or if they texted you or you texted them. So, we didn't have the internet on our phones for a very long time. They were bigger and smaller, but there was that sense of freedom, of adulthood, of doing it on your own. And I don't know about you, but I wasn't super nervous. I had done some things where like I'd gone with my brother and sister, or I was just always I'm the oldest. So I was like, I would always pay attention and, kind of want to help things. And I just felt like I got this. I'll figure it out. So, I did. And I went on a couple other trips in school, like leadership things in high school. I went to Indiana University, but I got picked up by my dad's friend that lived in Indianapolis. So I was on my own to go there or to come back, but it was still traveling on a plane by myself. Sometimes we had to change planes and, figuring it out and negotiating where you had to go and making sure you got to your gate. And again, like if you were going to be delayed, you just had to sit there and you'd call your parents or your friends or whoever was meeting you. There was also that sense when you got a little older, maybe in college or high school, and you got to go on spring break with just you and your friends, and the road trips. And again, we didn't have cell phones, so there was no Google Maps. So it was like going to AAA and getting a triptych or going and getting a map and figuring out the destination. And then when we did have the internet, using MapQuest, and there was another one, but I can't remember, and printing out pages and pages and pages of directions that you would use and look at while you're driving, real safe. But, curating that playlist and making sure you had like the CDs that you wanted to play, or making a mix CD or a mixtape. It really was the time where you started to feel like an adult. But you still know you had your parents. Like if something really happened, you had people. I know we talk about how our parents were like, F around and find out for yourself. No one died, whatever, put some dirt on it. But, they might be annoyed, but when you really needed them, they were there. And they were definitely concerned when you wanted a trip. Like they didn't, like once you got there, whatever, they didn't need to hear from you, or maybe call once, but you were to definitely let them know when you got there and when you were leaving, so they knew when to pick you up. and yeah, that was the thing too. You had to sometimes wait at the airport for someone. A plane could be delayed and you didn't know about it. Now you can kind of figure it out. But that feeling of, there's something about traveling where you just feel that sense of independence, and it's really cool. It's also a little lonely sometimes because you are by yourself. And as a woman, unfortunately, whether it was back in the 80s or 90s or now the 2000s, you still have to be careful and be more aware of your surroundings, even when you're in a group of friends. I went on a trip in college, an advertising trip to New York, met some really cool people, but we still like paid attention to each other because we were in a strange city by ourselves, having the best time. It was so fun going to shows and feeling like a New Yorker and learning about advertising. And it was a really cool experience. So yeah, it's interesting to think about the freedom that travel gives you, and the freedom that, while we had a lot of freedom growing up because we were latchkey kids and our parents were like, go outside or go get a job in the summer or after school, we did have that sense of independence, but we were usually outside with our friends, right? Or, hanging out with our siblings. But until you go somewhere by yourself, you really don't realize like how independent you are and how resilient like we were. We really could navigate these things by ourselves because we had to kind of be adults earlier. And I mean, we were still kids, but you sort of had to be adults earlier. And your parents really did kind of be like, you need to be responsible. Here's the money. Here's the traveler's checks. Remember traveler's checks? That's what you had to go get those before you went on a trip. And like my mom instilled in me, she's like, okay, you're going on this trip and you need to set aside money, like $100 or whatever, $50 or $100 for the end of the trip. So just in case you end up, you'll get carried away and you're having a good time. And she's like, that's fine, but make sure you save some money for the end of the trip, just in case you don't want to end up at the end with nothing. And I did. My friends thought it was funny, but I had money left. So, and like thinking about, okay, I want to buy something really cool, like really thinking about what I wanted to buy, wherever I was going. I bought like a little Coach purse I mean, that was one of many things. Well, I didn't buy that much stuff, but setting aside the money, like knowing how much I wanted to spend, being responsible for, your ID and your ticket and your luggage. And it make you feel very grown up and like, hey, I'm so cool. And look at me reading this book and look at me with my Walkman and my CDs. How many of us had a travel CD case? I had one that was, it was smaller, right? It was like the size of a CD, but not the bigger cases. I think mine was a Paul Frank because I loved, so it had the monkey on it. I thought it was very cool. And I had my travel bag and my purse and my luggage. The luggage is worth. Thank God for the luggage now, because can I just say the luggage we had, first of all, it's ugly. We had this like yellow suitcase with a giant A on it because just ugly. And now the luggage is nicer. Granted, and it wheels around. It's much easier to maneuver. You just have to make sure you don't get somebody else's because all the bags kind of look alike. So yeah. Sometimes I long for those simpler days, especially in today's crazy world that we live in, for those simpler times where, yes, you can end up on the back of a milk carton and you should have to be careful, and you would get the lectures and, from your parents, and society kind of put the fear of God into us. We were going to get swallowed by quicksand, spontaneously combust, or get stolen in a white van. Or when I was in college, we had to worry about roofies in our drinks. So it was an interesting time, but it was a lot more innocent. And I kind of do miss sometimes being completely like disconnected. It was a little bit nice to be in Europe and kind of know what was going on, but kind of not. But I, as thankful as I am for my Portugal trip, yeah, I would love to go on a trip sometime, kind of doing it 80s, 90s style. Although I kind of like having the cell phone and the map on there in my pocket. Anyway, we are getting a little long-winded here, so let's wrap things up. We have new content coming next month. Since it's tax month, we're going to talk to an expert on, budgeting and finance. I didn't want to talk about taxes or anything because nobody wants to talk about that ever. So we're going to talk about, just some tips and things to do with budgeting and finances and whatever in midlife. If you have any thoughts or questions you'd like me to ask her, please be sure to send them. You can find my email in the show notes. Also, I want to start something new, and I want to do it quarterly. So we may get it in April, or we may just do it in May, but I want to do a GenX roundtable. And what I mean by that is I'd like to get several people, between like 2 to 4, and we could either do it all at once in a roundtable, or I could just pick a few people and we do quick little like 15-minute interviews and pick some topics that you guys can suggest, or I'll pick from like a hat, so to speak. It can be topics to do with now, like, dating, or we can pick music. Like we can talk about Depeche Mode, or we can talk about Cabbage Patch Kids or Garbage Pail Kids, or, Star Wars, whatever it is, and just spend some time talking about those and see what the conversations come out, like a little time kind of thing. And do a mix of midlife and reminiscence, and just see what happens. And I like to do it quarterly. So if you're interested in that, again, there is my email, or there's like a how to be a guest in the show notes. And if you have, again, any suggestions for any topics that you'd like me to cover, or if you'd like to be a guest, or you have people you'd like me to talk to, please let me know. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at the GenX Experience Pod, and to subscribe and like and review and rate and all the things on Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe. It helps get the podcast out. And if you like this episode, please share it with other Gen Xers. Like I said, we're trying to grow this community, and I definitely want to hear from you. So I'm going to finish this podcast like I do all the podcasts, because Busty is in the background starting to whine because it's his time to go to the bathroom. So don't you forget about me, because I won't forget about you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Gen X Experience. If today's episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it on social media or with a friend. We'll see you back here next time.